There comes a moment in deep inner growth when your outer life no longer matches your inner clarity. Nothing dramatic happens on the surface, yet something subtle breaks inside you. Suddenly, you find that you cannot stand being around most people anymore. Friends you once enjoyed now exhaust you. Family gatherings that you used to tolerate now feel unbearable. You wonder, have I become arrogant? Am I falling into spiritual pride, or has the awakening process gone wrong? But I want to suggest to you that what you are experiencing is not a failure. It is a natural consequence of a specific shift in consciousness. You aren't losing your capacity for connection, you are losing your tolerance for illusion. This shift often begins quietly. You still show up, you still listen, you still care. But inside you feel a growing sense of disconnection. It is not anger, it is not hatred. It is a kind of exhaustion that appears without warning. You leave social situations feeling drained instead of fulfilled, wondering why simple interactions now require so much effort. Most people never question this feeling. They assume something is wrong with them. They tell themselves they are becoming antisocial, judgmental, or emotionally closed. But the truth is more uncomfortable and far more honest. What is changing is not your capacity for connection. What is changing is the level at which you perceive reality. Before awakening, human connection is built on shared assumptions. People bond through habits, ambitions, complaints, and fears they rarely examine. These shared patterns create a sense of belonging. You talk about work, money, problems, plans, and distractions. Content may differ, but the structure is the same. Everyone participates in the same mental rhythm. This rhythm feels natural because it is familiar. From an early age, you are taught what matters, what deserves attention, and what success looks like. Relationships form around ideas. Identity grows inside them. No one questions the structure because everyone is standing on it together. But awakening begins when you step slightly outside that structure. You start noticing how much of conversation is automatic, how often people speak without listening, how frequently emotions repeat themselves without resolution. You see how identity protects itself through stories, opinions, and constant noise. And once you see this, you cannot return to unconscious participation. This is where the discomfort begins. You are no longer fully inside the shared social trance, yet you are still surrounded by it. People speak a language you understand, but no longer inhabit. They invite you into concerns that no longer feel real. They expect reactions that no longer arise natural. And pretending becomes tiring. This does not mean others are wrong. It means alignment has shifted. Connection once depended on shared illusion. When illusion dissolves, friction appears. Not because love has disappeared, but because resonance has changed. You may still care deeply, you may still wish others well, but something inside you refuses to engage in what feels false. This is not spiritual arrogance. It is honesty. Dislike is often not dislike at all. It is the body signaling that participation now requires compromise. And the moment awareness grows, compromise begins to feel unbearable. This is the first fracture in awakening, not loneliness, but incompatibility. Not rejection, but recognition. As awareness deepens, perception begins to change in ways that are difficult to explain, but impossible to ignore. You don't suddenly gain new information. You gain a different relationship with what is already there. You start seeing patterns instead of isolated events, reactions instead of personalities, fear instead of confidence. And this changes how every interaction feels. Before this shift, conversations felt engaging because you were absorbed in them. You reacted automatically. You defended opinions. You sought validation without realizing it. There was movement, emotion, and drama, and all of it felt meaningful. But as awareness grows, something strange happens. The same conversations repeat themselves, but now you can see the mechanism behind them. You notice how often people speak to relieve anxiety rather than to communicate truth. How opinions are used as shy. L's. How stories are repeated, not to be understood, but to be reinforced. The words are different, but the emotional pattern is the same. And once this becomes clear, it becomes difficult to stay fully engaged. This is not because you feel superior. In fact, it can feel deeply uncomfortable. Part of you remembers being exactly the same way. You remember how convincing those stories once felt. The memory creates empathy, but empathy does not erase the distance that awareness creates. You begin to realize that much of human interaction is not about connection at all. It is about regulation. People use conversation to calm themselves, to feel seen, to maintain identity. When awareness is low, this exchange feels mutual. When awareness rises, the imbalance becomes obvious. This is where withdrawal often begins, not dramatic withdrawal, not cutting people off, just a subtle stepping back. You listen more than you speak. You stop feeding certain conversations. You feel less compelled to respond. And this change can confuse others. They may sense your distance without understanding its source. Inside, guilt often appears. You wonder if you are abandoning people, if you are becoming emotionally unavailable. What you are actually abandoning is unconscious participation. You are no longer willing to play roles that no longer feel true. This can feel lonely, because connection based on distraction dissolves faster than connection based on presence. When distraction loses its grip, many relationships weaken, not because there was no care, but because there was no depth. Awareness changes what feels nourishing. What once felt stimulating now feels empty. What once felt exciting now feels repetitive. This does not make you cold. It makes you honest. The difficulty is that honesty often comes before new forms of connection appear. There is a gap where the old no longer works, and the new has not yet arrived. And in that gap, disconnection can feel like loss. But this phase is not a mistake. It is a recalibration. You are learning to recognize the difference between interaction and connection, between noise and presence, between being occupied and being met. And once this distinction is felt, it cannot be unfelt. This is why the world begins to feel quieter even when people are still speaking. With increased awareness comes increased sensitivity, not in a mystical sense, but in a very practical, embodied way. You begin to notice how interactions affect you after they end. You feel whether a conversation leaves you grounded or unsettled, clear or depleted. This sensitivity is not imagined. It is the nervous system responding to truth. Before awakening, you may have absorbed emotional energy without noticing. You listened, reacted, advised, sympathized, and carried other people's states as if they were your own. This felt normal because it was unconscious. But as awareness grows, this absorption becomes visible. You notice when someone speaks not to connect, but to unload. You sense when attention is being pulled rather than shared. This is often where discomfort intensifies. You start feeling tired around certain people without any obvious reason. There is no argument, no conflict, just a quiet drain. And because nothing dramatic is happening, you struggle to justify your reaction. You tell yourself you're being too sensitive. You try to push through it, but your body does not lie. What you are feeling is the need for boundaries. At first, these boundaries are not intellectual. You don't announce them. You don't explain them. You simply begin to limit exposure. You stay quieter. You leave earlier. You choose solitude over social obligation. From the inside, it feels like relief. This phase is often misunderstood, both by others and by yourself. You may worry that you are becoming selfish, that you are pulling away when people need you. But boundaries are not rejection, they are regulation. You are learning the difference between compassion and self-abandonment. True compassion does not require you to carry what is not yours. Presence does not require depletion. You can care deeply without absorbing another person's emotional weight. But until this distinction is embodied, distance becomes necessary. Solitude plays an important role here, not isolation, but intentional space. Space A allows your system to reset. It allows awareness to settle without constant stimulation. It allows you to hear yourself without interference. This is not avoidance, it is integration. When boundaries begin forming, many old dynamics break down. People who relied on your emotional availability may feel uncomfortable. They may sense change without understanding it. Some may accuse you of being distant or different. And in a way, they are right. You are different, not because you care less, but because you are no longer leaking energy unconsciously. You are learning to choose when and how you engage. And this choice can feel uncomfortable at first, because it disrupts familiar roles. But this discomfort is temporary. What is forming beneath it is stability. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They allow genuine connection while protecting your inner balance. And without them, awareness cannot mature. It becomes overwhelmed, reactive, and unsustainable. This phase teaches you something essential. Connection that costs your peace is not connection at all. And learning this lesson changes how you relate to everyone, including yourself. As awareness continues to deepen, a new challenge quietly appears. It is more subtle than exhaustion, and more dangerous than isolation. This challenge is not found in others, but within yourself. It is the return of ego disguised as insight. When perception sharpens, you become more sensitive to unconscious behavior. You notice it in conversations, reactions, habits, and emotional patterns. At first, this awareness feels neutral, but over time, irritation can creep in. You may find yourself feeling impatient with people who repeat the same stories, chase the same goals, or remain unaware of their own patterns. This is where awakening can quietly turn into judgment. You may begin to feel that others are behind, asleep, or unaware. Not loudly, not arrogantly, but subtly. A quiet sense of distance forms. And while part of this distance, natural incompatibility, part of it may be avoidance. Awareness does not remove the ego all at once. It exposes it layer by layer. And when ego feels threatened, it adapts. It may adopt the language of spirituality. It may turn clarity into identity. It may begin comparing levels of awareness. This is a critical moment. True awareness includes humility. It recognizes that insight does not equal completion. Seeing unconsciousness does not mean you are free of it. Often, irritation toward others reflects parts of yourself that have not yet been fully integrated. When frustration arises, it is worth pausing, not to suppress the feeling, but to investigate it. Is this response coming from clarity or from resistance, from presence or from superiority? Awakening is not about separating yours, self, from humanity. It is about seeing humanity clearly, including your own contradictions. The moment awareness becomes a reason to feel above others, it collapses into identity, and identity always divides. This does not mean you force yourself to tolerate what drains you. Boundaries still matter. Distance can still be necessary, but the inner posture matters more than the outer action. There is a difference between stepping back with clarity and stepping back with contempt. The first is clean, the second is reactive. Many people confuse the two. This phase asks for honesty rather than withdrawal. It asks you to recognize where insight ends and defense begins, where discernment turns into avoidance, where solitude becomes hiding. Awareness matures not by rejecting others, but by including yourself fully, by acknowledging that growth is uneven, nonlinear, and ongoing, by allowing space for compassion without self-betrayal. When this balance is found, something softens. The sharp edge of irritation dulls. You no longer need to push people away internally, even if you choose distance externally. You stop needing to prove awareness. You stop measuring progress. You stop comparing paths. And in that letting go, awareness deepens again. This chapter of awakening is uncomfortable because it strips away another illusion, the illusion of being finished. It reminds you that growth is not about escaping humanity, but about meeting it without distortion. Only from this place can connection return without cost. At some point in the awakening process, solitude stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like a necessity. Not because you dislike people and not because you want to escape the world, but because something inside you needs space to reorganize. The old ways of relating no longer work, and the new ways have not yet taken shape. This is one of the least discussed phases of growth. Externally, it may look like withdrawal. You spend more time alone. You decline invitati. Ons, you speak less and observe more. But internally, something important is happening. You are no longer defining yourself through constant interaction. You are learning to exist without reflection. For most of your life, your sense of self was shaped by response. Who you were depended on how others reacted to you. Roles form naturally. The listener, the helper, the achiever, the agreeable one. These roles created stability, but they also created limitation. Awakening begins to loosen them. Solitude allows these roles to dissolve. In quiet space, there is nothing to perform, no one to impress, no one to manage emotionally. At first, this can feel unsettling. Without familiar feedback, identity weakens. You may feel empty, unsure, or disconnected. Many people mistake this feeling for loneliness or depression, but it is neither. It is unstructured awareness. In this space, you begin noticing how often you used to adjust yourself to maintain harmony, how frequently you edited your words, emotions, and reactions to fit expectations. Solitude reveals how much energy that constant adaptation required. As this becomes clear, something shifts. You stop rushing to fill silence. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop seeking reassurance through connection. This does not make you isolated. It makes you grounded. Over time, a new sense of self begins forming, one that is less reactive and more stable, one that does not depend on constant validation, one that can be present without needing to engage. This is where authenticity develops. From this place, you no longer seek connection out of emptiness. You seek it out of resonance, and resonance is selective. Not everyone can meet you at this level, and that is not a judgment. It is simply reality. As solitude does its work, you may notice that your tolerance for superficial interaction decreases even further. But alongside that, a deeper patience emerges. You are no longer restless for connection. You are willing to wait for what feels real. This waiting is not passive. It is deliberate. You are allowing your inner world to stabilize before inviting others back in. And when connection does return, it feels different, quieter, simpler, more honest. There is less effort, less explanation, less need to manage outcomes. Solitude is not the end of connection. It is the refinement of it. This chapter of awakening teaches you how to be with yourself without distraction. And once that is learned, relationships are no longer used to escape from yourself. They become places where presence can be shared rather than sought. This is the foundation for a different kind of connection. Eventually, a quiet stability begins to settle inside you, not suddenly and not dramatically, but gently, like dust falling after a long disturbance. You notice that the sharp edges of earlier discomfort have softened. The need to withdraw constantly begins to fade. You no longer feel overwhelmed by the presence of others in the same way you once did. This is not because the world has changed. It is because your center has. You can now be around unconsciousness without being pulled into it. You can listen to familiar pattern without feeling irritated. You can witness drama without needing to fix it, absorb it, or escape from it. This does not mean you agree with everything you see. It means you are no longer destabilized by it. This is stable presence. From this place, compassion becomes cleaner. It is no longer mixed with obligation or guilt. You do not help to feel needed. You do not listen to avoid rejection. You do not engage to maintain identity. You engage when it is natural, and you step back when it is not. Your boundaries remain, but they no longer feel defensive. They feel neutral. You may notice that your social circle is smaller than before. Some relationships may have faded entirely. Others may have transformed, and a few new ones may appear quietly without effort. These connections feel defer. They are not built on constant stimulation or shared distraction. They are built on ease. There is less talking but more understanding, less explanation but more clarity, less effort but more depth. You can sit in silence with another person without discomfort. You can speak honestly without needing to manage how it will be received. You can be present without performing. This is what real connection feels like. At this stage, you understand something that was not clear before. The discomfort you felt earlier was not a flaw in the process. It was the process. It was the shedding of unconscious patterns, false roles, and borrowed identities. Disliking people was never the truth. Outgrowing certain ways of relating was. If you are still in the earlier phases, feeling distant, irritated, or alone, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not becoming less human. You are becoming more honest. Allow the process to unfold at its own pace. You do not need to force connection. You do not need to explain your change. You do not need to return to what no longer fits. In time, presence becomes your home, and from that home, relationships form naturally without strain. Fewer, perhaps, but real. And one real connection, grounded in awareness, is worth more than 100 that require you to abandon yourself. This is not the end of awakening. It is simply a place where you can finally rest.